Mao Zedong loved reading, especially Chinese classical literature. He not only could learn from history, but also was good at using the past to satirize the present and new interpretations of ancient things. Among the many Chinese literary and dramatic works, there is a Beijing opera called Famine Temple, which was deeply loved by Mao Zedong, and he watched it many times during his Yan'an period. Later, during the negotiations in Chongqing, Chiang Kai-shek invited Chairman Mao to watch a play many times, one of which was Famine Temple. Famine Temple tells the story of the Ming Dynasty. A woman named Song Xiao, after her husband was wronged and imprisoned, took advantage of the Queen Mother's visit to Famine Temple to offer incense, and stop the sedan chair to seek justice. The Queen Mother was moved by Song Xiao and ordered the eunuch Lu Jin to deal with the matter. Later, Lu Jin ordered Zhao Lian to investigate the case. After Zhao Lian's investigation, the case finally came to light. Famine Temple vividly depicts the world and human conditions in the Middle and Late Ming Dynasty. It has been enduring for many years and is a classic in the hearts of the masses. However, the most impressive characters in the play are neither Song Xiao, who pleads for her husband's life and values love and righteousness, nor Lu Biao, a sinister and cunning villain, but Jia Gui, a young eunuch under the chief Lu Jin. Jia Gui was servile to his superiors, domineering to his inferiors, and others gave him a seat in front of Lu Jin. He said that he was used to standing and dared not sit. He was a typical image of a slave in the old society. He is like a vivid mirror, reflecting the ugly face of a powerful villain. Epstein, an American journalist who interviewed in Yan'an back then, recorded in detail Mao Zedong's voice and smile when he was watching a play. According to him, when Mao Zedong saw eunuch Lu Jin tell his eunuch Jia Gui to sit down, and Jia Gui said that he was used to standing, he clapped his hands and laughed out loud. In 1949, Mao Zedong once again watched Famine Temple starring Tan Fuying, Ho Zhiyue, Hao Xiaochen, Li Duokui, and others at the Chang'an Grand Theater in Beiping. He said with emotion to the people around him, "There are two typical characters in Famine Temple, one is Lu Jin and the other is Jia Gui. Lu Jin has never done anything good in his life, except for correcting a wrong case in Famine Temple. And Jia Gui's every word, deed, and every move is a complete slave look. We must oppose this kind of slave thinking." These words deeply touched the people around them. They knew that the chairman was encouraging them to think independently, seek truth from facts, and maintain self-esteem. In 1956, Mao Zedong brought up Famine Temple again. Only this time, the characters like Jia Gui have a new color of the times. At that time, New China was facing a severe situation. On the one hand, it had to face the blockade of Western countries, and on the other hand, the relationship with the Soviet Union was becoming increasingly tense. Some cadres gradually lost their fighting spirit and national self-confidence under the situation of being attacked by two sides, and became at a loss. Mao Zedong keenly captured this phenomenon. He mentioned Jia Gui many times in public, hoping to use the name of criticizing Jia to alert some improper trends and reverse some unhealthy phenomena. On April 20th of that year, Chairman Mao listened to a report on the second five-year plan in Zhongnanhai. Leaders Liu Shaokai, Zhou Enlai, Zhu De, and Deng Xiaoping were also present. At the meeting, Mao Zedong criticized the plan, saying that without Soviet aid, China's construction would not be successful. He said, "This kind of thinking is wrong. Being a slave is used to being a slave, and there is always a sense of slavery, just like Jia Gui in the play Famine Temple. When he was asked to sit, he said he was used to standing." Immediately afterwards, Chairman Mao cited the examples of Lenin's resistance to the Second International and China's resistance to the Third International to discuss the importance of a country's self-respect and self-improvement. At that time, the Soviet Union provided large-scale assistance to China, and some Soviet advisors developed an arrogant attitude, while many Chinese comrades felt that they took others' hands short and often showed humility and even inferiority in front of the Soviets. Mao Zedong was very disapproving of this phenomenon. On April 25th, he brought up this matter again, criticizing some people who have been slaves for a long time, feel inferior in everything, and can't straighten their waists in front of foreigners, just like Jia Gui in Famine Temple. Mao Zedong encouraged Chinese people to redevelop the spirit of despising U.S. imperialism during the period of resisting U.S. aggression and aiding Korea, so as to truly stand on their own among the nations of the world. The foreigners here obviously refer to the Soviets. On March 22, 1958, Mao Zedong mentioned Jia Gui again at the Chengdu Conference. He said, the monk women in The Romance of the West Chamber stepped forward to deliver a letter to General Bama. We would like to have some women in China now. The phenomenon of some leading cotters' low spirits is a manifestation of slaves, just like Fomen Temple, it's like the Jiagui in the movie. The spirit of the speech at this meeting was quickly conveyed to cotters at all levels. On May 14, the Second Ministry of Machinery Industry submitted a report to Mao Zedong. The report said, to the Soviet experts, at the beginning was a completely passive dogmatic attitude, dare not think, dare not ask, just copy and copy. After the Chengdu meeting, it was discovered that the work of the Soviet experts must also emphasize retreat, in order to false with real, virtual, and real combined. Mao Zedong commented in this report, Soviet experts are all good comrades, and what is reasonable always makes sense. Unreasonable, or not wise, so the two sides are separated, and the responsibility lies with us. We respect the Soviet comrades, work hard and be open-minded. Study, but you must get rid of superstitions. No one looks down on Jiagui. Subsequently, Pen Dihue conveyed the spirit in the military system, advocating that Soviet military advisors should not only respect and learn with an open mind, but also break superstition. In 1960, as China and the Soviet Union turned against each other, the Soviet government withdrew all experts and took away all drawings. Many major design projects and scientific research projects came to a standstill, and some construction projects were forced to stop. This undoubtedly added to the difficulties for China, which was in trouble at the time. Some foreign commentators even said that China's nuclear weapons development has suffered a devastating blow. Faced with this predicament, Chairman Mao did not have the slightest timidity. He said loudly, "We have no choice but to rely on ourselves and our own two hands." It is this determination of self-reliance that has greatly encouraged the confidence and courage of all personnel on the national defense science and technology front. The Chinese finally relied on their own efforts to complete the great cause of 2 bombs and 1 satellite. Oppose the Jiagui-type villain and the deep-rooted servile thought in this kind of person, advocate self-esteem, self-love, self-confidence and self-improvement, and be able to be tenacious and unyielding in the face of power and oppression. This is the portrayal of Mao Zedong's life and is also the eternal legacy he left for future generations' spiritual wealth. Chairman Mao is the person with the hardest bones in China, and what he admires are people with backbone and integrity. Chairman Mao mentioned a person named Jiagui more than once. Chairman Mao bluntly said that Jiagui was the person he looked down on the most. Because he is a slave without integrity, Chairman Mao commented on him, "I have been a slave for a long time, and I can't straighten my waist in front of my master." Why did Chairman Mao dislike Jiagui so much? Who is Jiagui? 01. In fact, Jiagui is the name of an eunuch in the Peking opera Fomen Temple. Fomen Temple is adapted from a story in the early Ming dynasty. The story is true, but the role of Jiagui is fictional. Similar to most traditional dramas, Peking opera Fomen Temple also narrates the story of talented scholars and beautiful women, emperors and generals, kindness and resentment. Stills of Fomen Temple. Chairman Mao liked the play Fomen Temple very much. During his stay in Yan'an, Chairman Mao watched this play with great interest 4 times. During the negotiations in Chongqing, the host arranged several Peking opera performances in order to ease the contradictions between intense negotiations. The guests invited to watch the performance included Chairman Mao, important members of the Kuomintang and famous Democrats in Chongqing. The performer is the famous troupe Li Family Troupe. It is said that the reason why the Li Family Troupe is invited is mainly because of Chiang Kai-shek's personal preference. Among many Peking opera masters, Chiang Kai-shek especially liked the performance of Li Huiliang, a martial artist from the Li family class. At that time, Chiang Kai-shek ordered 2 plays Mu Guiying in Command and 13 Sisters, and Chairman Mao ordered Fomen Temple. There is another way of saying that the Kuomintang people ordered Apology to the Thorn, and the Democrats ordered Harmony with generals and prime ministers, but Chairman Mao unexpectedly ordered Havoc in Heaven. Although this statement has no evidence or is purely fictional, it vividly reveals the different positions and choices of the 3 forces at that time. Chairman Mao likes to watch Fomen Temple. In addition to valuing its literary and artistic value and appreciating the superb performance skills of the artists, Chairman Mao is particularly interested in the little eunuch Jiagui in the play. There is such a plot in Fomen Temple. When the chief eunuch Lu Jin asked the young eunuch Jiagui to sit down, Jiagui replied naturally, "Don't sit down, I'm used to standing as a slave." It is said that after the performance began, several important members of the Kuomintang sitting in the back row were still talking about it, and they kept talking about US aid and international aid. Apparently, they wanted to show off in front of Chairman Mao, to show how powerful they were with the support of the United States. At this time, Chairman Mao did not speak, let alone revealed a hint of ridicule or disdain. But when the above-mentioned plot was played on the stage, Chairman Mao showed contempt and disgust on his face. He pointed to Jiagui on the stage and said to the people around him, "Look, the master gave him a seat." But he said he was used to standing, and he looked like a slave. Although the volume of Chairman Mao's words was not loud, they were heard in the ear, and the key members of the Kuomintang sitting in the back row could hear them clearly and truly. Later generations speculated that Chairman Mao's words were specifically addressed to those key members of the Kuomintang, with the intention of mocking the ugliness of the Kuomintang government's obedience and groveling in front of its American masters in order to win American aid. We have no way of knowing whether what Chairman Mao said at the time really had such a meaning. However, after hearing Chairman Mao's words, the key members of the Kuomintang in the back row completely shut up. I think those officials should have entered the roll and checked their seats. A big eunuch with physical and mental disabilities, a submissive little eunuch, a slave look, such irony is too spicy. Kuomintang still photo 2. In the summer of 1949, Chairman Mao came from Xiangshan to watch a performance at the Chang'an Grand Theater in Beiping, where the traditional Peking opera Kuomintang was about to be staged. At the invitation of Chairman Mao, some representatives who will attend the first CPPCC also came to watch the performance. After the performance, Chairman Mao walked out of the theater surrounded by everyone. While walking, Chairman Mao said to the Democrats around him, "The two eunuchs in Kuomintang are very typical, one is Lu Jin and the other is Jiagui. Lu Jin has never done a good thing before, but corrected a wrong case in Kuomintang, which can be regarded as what he did for the people a good thing." Chairman Mao commented, "This Jiagui is very humble, in front of his master, Jiagui has no dignity, no spine. His every move, every word, and deed is a complete slave look." Someone echoed, "Eunuchs are not normal people, and Jiagui is the representative of this group." Chairman Mao changed the subject and said, "There are many Jiaguis around us. They are pitiful and pathetic. We must advocate seeking truth from facts and independence of personality. A person must have a little self-esteem and a little backbone. A slave like Jiagui thoughts don't matter." Chairman Mao also said, "The fox pretends to be powerful and domineering to the subordinates, and is submissive and servile to the superiors. Even the great eunuch Lu Jin looks down on him." Over time, Jiagui has become synonymous with slave. Speaking of Jiagui, people will naturally think of the kind of people who are full of servility and have no spine. 02. Chairman Mao especially admired a literati who does not eat what is cheap. He would rather starve to death than receive relief food from the United States. In the 1940s, during the war, all industries in China were depressed and prices soared. Even people like Zhu Ziqing, a professor at Tsinghua University, can't afford food, and the family can only survive on porridge. At this time, the United States shipped grain to China, and the Kuomintang authorities issued flour ration certificates to the professors, and the professors could purchase the flour aided by the United States with the certificate. Chiang Kai-shek and Leighton Stewart, first from the right. However, due to the depreciation of the currency and the frequent interruption of food supply, the price of food has skyrocketed. Zhu Ziqing's monthly salary is only enough to buy more than 3 bags of flour. What's more, even if they can buy flour, the Americans have conditions. Since they accept the relief from the United States, the Chinese should be grateful to the United States and bow their heads. In the vernacular, it is, if you want to eat American flour, then you have to be obedient. In short, flour is not given for free. In the article Farewell, Leighton Stewart, Chairman Mao wrote in pungent language. The Americans sprinkled some relief powder in Beiping, Tianjin, and Shanghai to see who was willing to bend down to pick it up. Then, Chairman Mao mocked, "It's such a bad food, it will hurt your stomach if you eat it." Sure enough, Chairman Mao's words came true soon after. In May 1948, the US government tried in vain to revive Japanese militarism. As soon as the news came out, it was strongly condemned by all walks of life in China. In this regard, the US ambassador to China Leighton Stewart and Consul General Carbode in Shanghai made threatening and insulting speeches. In their speeches, Leighton Stewart and Carbode refused to respond to inquiries from all walks of life in China. Instead, they used American aid flour as an excuse to accuse the Chinese do not know good and evil, and will repay kindness with revenge, and even threaten to cut off American aid. Facing insults and threats from the Americans, 110 scholars from Tsinghua University jointly issued the solemn statement of Teachers 110, calling on the people of the country to refuse to receive U.S. aid flour to protest the U.S. policy of supporting Japan. There is such a passage in the statement. For the sake of the dignity and integrity of the Chinese people, we categorically reject all charity goods from the United States that have the nature of buying souls, whether to purchase or give. Before the statement was officially released, Professor Wu Han from Tsinghua University went to Zhu Zixing's home, hoping that Zhu Zixing would sign the statement. But as soon as he stepped into Zhu Zixing's house, Professor Wu Han hesitated. Because of hunger and serious illness, Zhu Zixing was bedridden and had no money for medical treatment. What's more, there are 9 people in Zhu Zixing's family, old and young, and the life of the Zhu family has been extremely difficult. Professor Wu Han thought that if Zhu Zixing signed the declaration, life for the Zhu family would be even more difficult. Therefore, he said to Professor Zhu Zixing, whether to sign the declaration, my suggestion is to do what you can, don't force it. Zhu Zixing. Professor Zhu Zixing said, Mr. Wu should be aware of my character and attitude. During the spring and autumn period, people with integrity would not eat food that comes from you even if they starve to death. I've made up my mind a long time ago, I'd rather starve than accept insulting handouts from the Americans. After saying this, Zhu Zixing sat up with his sick body supported, and signed the 3 words Zhu Zixing on the declaration without hesitation. Early the next morning, Professor Zhu Zixing asked his wife to return the flour ration certificate. Seeing that there were still a few flour tickets of the current month at home, Zhu Zixing said to his wife, hurry up and return it. There is still a small half bag of flour at home. You take it away together. If you want to return it, you must return it completely. More than a month later, Professor Zhu Zixing's condition deteriorated, and the medicine failed. Unfortunately, he passed away at the age of 50. As he was dying, Professor Zhu Zixing strenuously and intermittently told his family members, one thing must be remembered, I signed the declaration on the refusal of U.S. aid. From now on, no matter how difficult it is, you should not accept American flour. Some people say that Professor Zhu Zixing is scholarly spirited and that food is the paramount necessity of the people, so there is no need for Professor Zhu Zixing to fight to the death. But Chairman Mao did not see it that way. In the article Farewell, Leighton Stewart, Chairman Mao wrote, we Chinese have backbone. Many who were once liberals or democratic individualists stood up in the face of the U.S. imperialists and their lackeys, the Kuomintang reactionaries. We should write odes to Wen Yuduo and odes to Zhu Zixing. They show the heroism of our nation. In this article, we can also see a heroic and familiar saying. There is nothing to be afraid of a little bit of difficulty. Block it for 10 or 8 years, and all problems in China will be solved. The Chinese are not afraid of death, but are they still afraid of difficulties? Lao Tzu said, the people do not fear death, so why should they be afraid of death? 03. When China was facing the most severe international environment, Chairman Mao repeatedly mentioned the eunuch Jiagui in Fumin Temple. Chairman Mao wrote in on the 10 major relationships. Some people have been slaves for a long time and feel that they are not as good as others. They can't straighten their backs in front of foreigners. Like Jiagui in Fumin Temple, he was asked to sit, but he said he was used to standing. Chairman Mao reprimanded him as full of slavishness and incurable, and then called on the people of the whole country to improve national self-confidence, and develop the spirit of despising U.S. imperialism advocated in the war to resist U.S. aggression and aid Korea. In the early days of the founding of the People's Republic of China, the big brother of the Soviet Union gave great help to our country, and the Chinese people are grateful and respectful to the big brother of the Soviet Union. However, some problems have also been exposed in the frequent exchanges and close contact between Chinese and Soviet personnel. Chairman Mao meets Soviet leaders. At that time, the Second Ministry of Machinery submitted a report on the relationship with Soviet experts to Chairman Mao. After reading this report, Chairman Mao personally wrote, all brothers in the world, you must respect the comrades of the Soviet Union and learn from them humbly. However, you must also break the superstition and defeat Jiagui. Chairman Mao specially marked, you must know that Jiagui, that is, the slave, is looked down upon by anyone. In the middle and late 1950s, Chairman Mao mentioned the name Jiagui many times in his speeches and reports. At that time, our country was facing the most severe international environment since the founding of the People's Republic of China. On the one hand, Sino-Soviet relations are becoming increasingly tense, and there is a tendency to openly split. On the other hand, my country has been threatened by force and economic blockade by Western countries headed by the United States, and it is becoming more and more serious. Faced with one difficulty after another, some people in the country have become at a loss, and some people have even begun to lose confidence and waver in their beliefs. To read more good articles, please subscribe to The Era. In order to lead the new socialist China onto the path of independent development, Chairman Mao wrote the article on the 10 major relationships. In response to pessimistic and erroneous remarks such as if China loses the aid of the Soviet Union, China's construction cannot be successful, Chairman Mao pointedly pointed out. Some people are used to being slaves, and they are always a bit slavish, just like Jiagui in Fomen Temple. When they told him to sit, he said he was used to standing. Jiagui feels inferior in everything, and cannot straighten his waist in front of his master. Some of our comrades are very similar to Jiagui, and cannot straighten their waists in front of foreigners. In Chairman Mao's writing, Jiagui is a negative teacher, he is weak, superstitious about authority, he has no independent personality, and is a complete slave. At a meeting, Chairman Mao once again mentioned the name of Jiagui. He said impassionedly, "We must cut off the slave's tail, we must get rid of superstition, and we must completely overthrow Jiagui's style." No one looks down on Jiagui. Now, the deformed group of eunuchs has since disappeared. So, are there still people like Jiagui around us? Unfortunately, eunuchs have long since disappeared in the world, but people like Jiagui can be seen everywhere. This is the opinion of Mr. Ji Xianlin, a famous Orientalist master, linguist, writer, and historian. Ji Xianlin. Mr. Ji Xianlin said, "You don't need to look carefully, you may still often meet the Jiagui of Fomen Temple who is kneeling and can't stand." Why did Mr. Ji Xianlin say this? After the reform and opening up, our country absorbed foreign capital and introduced some advanced technologies and experiences from abroad. However, when the windows were opened, mosquitoes and flies also came in together. For a while, some people's curiosity about foreign cultures quickly turned into worship, and some elites developed a superstition towards the West, and worship devoutly in front of Western developed countries. They pursue American values, and some radicals even believe that the next step for China is to fully westernize. This is a kind of spiritual self-mutilation, behind which is Jiagui-style inferiority complex. Under the influence of this trend of thought, the Jiagui could not stand up, so they would never be able to walk a straight path. As everyone knows, China has China's national conditions, and China's affairs can only be handled by the Chinese themselves. The result of blind worship and superstition can only be humiliating and futile. 04. Finally, let me talk about the main difference between minion and slave. First of all, slave is forced, while slave is voluntary. Secondly, slave is a social class, while slave is a kind of social consciousness, national consciousness, and a distorted interpersonal relationship. The most critical difference between a slave and a minion is, a slave still has a life goal of being free, while a slave attaches everything to his master and has no life goal of his own. That is to say, although a slave is unfortunate, he is not so terrible, because he still knows how to struggle, at least he still has the hope of breaking free from shackles and gaining freedom. Human beings are forever Jiagui slaves. This is the fundamental reason why Chairman Mao despises Jiagui and doesn't like to see Jiagui. In Chairman Mao's view, Jiagui is nothing more than a walking corpse with no bones, no integrity, no dignity, no ideals, and his vivid soul has long since died. Chairman Mao's comments on the 19 emperors. After 1949, Mao Zedong made clear comments on the 18 emperors on various occasions. 1. Emperor Xian. Emperor Xian, the last monarch of the Shang dynasty, was posthumously named Emperor Xian of the Shang dynasty. Zhou called him King Zhou. After Emperor Xian succeeded to the throne, he attached great importance to farming, the people lived in stability, and the country was strong. He continued to use troops against Deng Ai, repelled Deng Ai's expansion into the hinterland of the Central Plains, and expanded the scope of the Shang dynasty's control to the Zhanghui area. In particular, the victory of the crusade against Suyi expanded the territory of Shang to the southeast coast. However, in the later period of Emperor Xian's reign, he spent huge sums of money to build a deer platform, a wine pool, pampering Daji, hanging his meat for a forest, and craving extravagance. He became headstrong and could not listen to different opinions. Kill Bigan and imprison Jitsi, use cannon fire and other torture to suppress the people and lose their hearts. In addition, the yearly battles consume a huge amount of national power, which instead affects itself. Zhou Xuan states, Zhou defeated the eastern barbarians and died. In 1046 BC, King Wu of Zhou defeated the Shang army in the historic Battle of Wei, and Emperor Xian boarded Lutai and set himself on fire to die for his country. Historical Records Volume 3 Yin Benji 3rd Records / Zhou's army was defeated. Zhou walked into Kaoch, climbed Lutai, dressed in his precious jade clothes, and died in the fire. / The Shang dynasty perished from then on. King Zhou is an insulting and contemptuous title for Zhou people. According to Shuowenji's citing posthumous explanation, cruel donating righteousness is called Zhou. In today's terms, Zhou is a villain who does all kinds of evil. Mao Zedong's comments. Actually, King Zhou was a man of great ability, literary and military skills. He managed the southeast and consolidated the unity of the Donghai and the Central Plains. He has made great achievements in history. King Zhou defeated the barbarians in Suzhou and won the battle, but suffered losses. It was very big, and there were too many prisoners to digest. King Wu of Zhou took advantage of the emptiness of the tap, and a large number of captives defected. The policy was not done very well, so it failed later. 2 Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang Yingzhen, 259 BC to 10 BC, was the monarch of Qin state at the end of the Warring States period. He ascended the throne at the age of 13, unified the 6 kingdoms and established the Qin dynasty at the age of 39, died at the age of 50 while on tour, and reigned for 37 years. Mao Zedong's comments. Mao Zedong had a lot of remarks on Qin Shi Huang, who was the first to unify China. They can be summed up as follows. 1. Qin Shi Huang is an expert who cares more about the present than the past. 2. Once, Mao Zedong said to Zhang Shizhao, you said that the Communist Party is equal to Qin Shi Huang. No, it is more than 100 times. 3. Confucius and Mencius are idealists, Sun Tzu is materialism, and the leftist of Confucianism. Confucius represents slave owners and nobles. Sun Tzu represents the landlord class. He also said that in Chinese history, it was Qin Shi Huang who really did something, and Confucius only talked empty words. 4. We should be fair. Qin Shi Huang is much greater than Confucius, but he has been scolded for thousands of years. 5. Advise the emperor to stop scolding Qin Shi Huang, and discuss the cause of burning the pit. The soul of the ancestor dragon died and Qin still lives, and the scientific name of Confucius is Gao Shishan. Qin political law has been practiced for 100 generations, and the 10 batches is not a good article. Familiar with On Feudalism by the Tang Dynasty, Amo Kongzihao returned to King Wen. All the successful politicians in the past dynasties were legalists in the early stage of feudal society. These people advocate the rule of law, and those who break the law will be killed, and they advocate favoring the present and despising the past. Confucianism is full of benevolence, righteousness, and morality, and full of male robbers and female prostitutes, all of which advocate favoring the past and devaluing the present. 6. Qin Shi Huang was the first famous emperor in China's feudal society. I am also Qin Shi Huang. Lin Biao called me Qin Shi Huang. China has always been divided into 2 factions, one faction says Qin Shi Huang is good, and the other says Qin Shi Huang is bad. I agree with Qin Shi Huang, not Confucius. 3. Xian Yu, overlord of Western Chu. Xian Yu, 232 BC, 202 BC, raised troops in Wu County at the end of the Qin dynasty, led the Chu army to defeat the Qin army in the Battle of Zhulu in 207 BC, and named himself overlord of Western Chu after the death of Qin. When Chu and Han were fighting for hegemony, they were defeated by Liu Bang in the Battle of Ixia, and finally they were surrounded by the Wujiang River, where they committed suicide and died. Xian Yu can be said to be the most brave military strategist in Chinese history, and the word overlord was exclusively used by Xian Yu in history. Mao Zedong's comments. 1. It is advisable to chase the poor with the remaining bravery, not to be famous and learn to be the overlord. 2. In a conversation in 1964, Mao Zedong further pointed out the 3 mistakes of Xian Yu's defeat. Hung Minyan refused to listen to Fan Zhen and let Liu Bang go, mechanically abided by the boundary agreement, and established Suzhou. then called Peng Chen. So, why can't Xiang Yu accept advice and employ people? This is related to his subjective weakness. 4. Liu Bang, Emperor Jiaozu of the Han Dynasty. Liu Bang, 247 BC, 195 BC, Emperor Jiaozu of the Han Dynasty, was the first emperor born as a commoner in Chinese history and the founding emperor of the Han Dynasty. During his reign, Jia conquered the world by himself, took rest and recuperation as the national policy, implemented light corvée and low tax, and vigorously developed the economy, issued the seeking talents to recruit management talents for the country, established etiquette to consolidate imperial power, paid equal attention to offering sacrifices to Confucius, used Confucian scholars to advocate filial piety to govern the world. Liu Bang is one of the great pioneers of the Han nationality and Han culture, and has made many contributions to the development of the Han nationality and the unification and strength of China. Mao Zedong's comments. 1. An old man makes a good man, the most powerful one among the feudal emperors. He won the world first because of the right decision-making, and second because of the right employment. In 1964, Mao Zedong further pointed out, since ancient times, most capable emperors were born rough. Liu Bang's Han dynasty was the most powerful among the feudal emperors. Liu Jing advised him not to establish the capital in Luoyang, but to establish the capital in Chang'an. He immediately went to Chang'an, the gap was drawn, Xiang Yu led his troops back east, and he also wanted to rest in Chang'an. Zhang Liang said, "What, a treaty or no treaty, to attack?" He immediately listened to Zhang Liang's words, and went east. When he said no, Zhang Liang kicked him, and he immediately changed his words and said, "If you want to seal it, you can seal it as the real king of Qi, why do you need a fake one?" 2. King Xiang was not a statesman, while King Han was a brilliant statesman. 5. Liu Che, Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty. Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty. Liu Che, 157 BC, 87 BC, was the 7th emperor of the Han Dynasty. He reigned for 54 years, second only to Emperor Kanzi of the Qing Dynasty. Emperor of the Han Dynasty carried out a number of drastic reforms after he actually took power, which had a profound impact on later generations of China. He opened up the largest territory of the Han Dynasty and made achievements in various fields. In his later years, he resorted to militarism and caused the disaster of witchcraft. In the 4th year of Zheng, Liu Che issued an imperial edict to sin against himself. In short, Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty was one of the greatest emperors in Chinese history because of his great talents and outstanding achievements in culture and martial arts. Mao Zedong's comments. Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty was very talented and broad-minded, and developed Liu Bang's achievements. In his later years, he knew the disadvantages of extravagance, arrogance, and alchemists, and issued an edict of guilt, which can be regarded as the heyday. 6. Emperor Liu Shi of the Han and Yuan dynasties. Han Yuan Emperor Liu Shi, 74 BC 33 BC, the 11th emperor of the Han dynasty, reigned for 16 years. The reign of Emperor Yuan was the starting point of the Western Han dynasty turning from prosperity to decline, and the social crisis gradually deepened. Emperor Yuan himself also indulged his relatives and eunuchs too much, which laid the root cause of the demise of the Western Han dynasty. Mao Zedong's comments. Didn't history mention something about the government of Wen and Zheng? In fact, Emperor Wen and Emperor Jing were only conservative, mediocre and incompetent. From Emperor Yuan, things went from bad to worse. 7. Cao 155 to 220, styled Ment. A famous military strategist, statesman, and poet in the late Eastern Han dynasty, and the founder of the Wei state during the Three Kingdoms period. Prime Minister of the Eastern Han dynasty, later named King Wei. After his death, he was posthumously King Wu of the Han dynasty. After his eldest son Cao Pi founded Wei state and proclaimed himself emperor, he was honored as Taizhi Wu emperor. Mao Zedong's comments. Cao is a great statesman, military strategist, and also a great poet. Cao unified northern China and founded the state of Wei. He reformed many evil policies in the Eastern Han dynasty, restrained the powerful, developed production, implemented the farming system, supervised land reclamation, promoted the rule of law, and advocated frugality, so that the society that had suffered great damage began to stabilize, recover, and develop. 8. Liu Yu, Emperor Songming of the Southern Dynasties. Songming Emperor Liu Yu, 439 to 472, the 7th emperor of the Song dynasty during the northern and southern dynasties. Liu Yu killed his nephew Liu Zi and came to power. During his 6.5 years in power, Liu Song's national power declined sharply due to the tragic internal struggles and the competition with the northern Wei dynasty for the Huibei region, and the people suffered unspeakably. The so-called the world is in turmoil, and the people are in dire straits. Mao Zedong's comments. Ascension to the throne can be described as strange. 9 Xiaoyan, Emperor Wu of Liang in the southern dynasties. Emperor Wu of Liang Xiaoyan, 464 to 549, the founder of Liang in the southern dynasty. Xiaoyan reigned for 48 years, the longest reign among the emperors of the southern dynasties. In the early days of Emperor Wu of Liang, the country was prosperous and strong, and he was a promising emperor. In the later period, he was obsessed with Buddhism and became a monk many times. Attempts to rule the people with Buddhism and condone evil led to the Hojing Rebellion and destroyed the economic foundation of Jiangnan. Mao Zedong's comments. 1 Xiaoyan is good at keeping healthy, does not eat too much, and does not approach women after middle age. However, it is not appropriate for Yu Ji to separate himself, the villain to advance day by day, and the good assistant to stay far away, so that he perishes. 2 Listening alone creates traitors, and acting alone creates chaos. Liang Wu has Yan. 10 Chen Shubeo, the Empress Chen of the southern dynasties. Chen Haozi Chen Shubeo, 553 to 604, the last emperor of the Chen dynasty during the southern and northern dynasties, reigned for 7 years. Chen Shubeo was a licentious emperor. According to southern history, Chen Benji, playing prostitutes and drinking, and writing poems. 16 years after Chen was destroyed by the Sui dynasty, Shubeo died of illness in Luoyang. Mao Zedong's comments. The intellectual emperor is no prospect. 11 Yang Jian, Emperor Wen of the Sui dynasty. Sui Wendi Yang Jian, 541 to 604, the founding emperor of the Sui dynasty, reigned for 24 years. Yang Jian established the Sui dynasty and unified China that had been divided for hundreds of years. The official selection system for selecting talents through imperial examinations he initiated has been used in China for 1,300 years. The system of 3 provinces and 6 ministries he established laid the foundation for the official system of later generations. He vigorously developed the economy and culture, making the Sui dynasty a prosperous country. During the reign of Emperor Kaihuang, the Sui dynasty had a vast territory and a population of more than 7 million households. It was a period of glorious Chinese farming culture. Mao Zedong's comments. Its approach contains great chaos. 12. Tang Taizong Li Shimin. Li Shimin, 598 to 649, the second emperor of the Tang dynasty, reigned for 23 years. Li Shimin is an outstanding military strategist, and made military exploits in the process of establishing the Tang dynasty. In 626, Li Shimin launched the Suanlu Gate incident, killing the prince Li Jianchen and his 4th brother Li Yuanji. He forced his father Li Yuan to abdicate and ascend the throne. After Li Shimin became emperor, he was good at listening to the opinions of his officials, ruled the world with literature, and opened up territories with martial arts. The glorious reign of Zheng Guan began. He will forever be recorded in the annals of history with his prominence in Wenzi and illustrious martial arts, and he has become a generation of sages. Mao Zedong's comments. Evaluation of his military ability. Since ancient times, there has been no one on the right of Li Shimin in the army, followed by Zhu Yuanzhang. 13 Zhu Wen, Taizhu of the later Liang dynasty. Zhu Wen, 852 to 912, abolished Emperor Ai of the Tang dynasty, Li Ju, and stood on his own. During Zhu Wen's reign, he attached great importance to farming, but the people's livelihood was very difficult due to years of fighting. In his later years, he was shameless and incestuous, raped his daughter-in-law, and was killed by his 3rd son Zhu Yugui. Mao Zedong's comments. Zhu Wen is in the place of the 4 wars. He is similar to Cao, but more cunning. 14 Li Kungsu, Emperor Zhuangzong of the later Tang dynasty. Later 10 Zhuangzong Li Kungsu, Sound Su, 885 to 926, the founder of the later Tang dynasty during the 5 dynasties period, was the eldest son of Jinwang Li Qiang, nicknamed Yezi. Before Li Kungsu became emperor, he fought bloody battles with Hao Liang for more than 10 years. After more than 100 battles, he was extremely brave. He was the most powerful emperor in the 5 dynasties period. But when he conquered the world, he didn't know how to govern the world. He favored actors, reused eunuchs, and the government was absurd. 3 years later, he was killed in a mutiny. The speed of failure was rare in history. Mao Zedong's comments. 1. Kang Yang Xiao's plan, Li Kungsu's decision, and Guo Kongtao's help, these 3 people can be described as heroes who understand current affairs. 2. Give birth to children like Li Yazhi. 15. Li Yu, the Queen Master of the Southern Tang Dynasty. Li Yu, 937 to 978, the last emperor of the Southern Tang Dynasty. Li Yu is not good at politics, he is a faint king who governs the country. But his artistic talent is extraordinary. He has certain attainments in calligraphy, painting, rhythm, poetry, and prose, especially in Ci, and he is known as the Emperor of Ci through the ages. He reigned for 15 years, and the Southern Tang Dynasty died 3 years later in the Song Dynasty. Mao Zedong's comments. 1. Although the Empress Li of the Southern Tang Dynasty was versatile, he did not grasp politics, and finally perished. 2. The intellectual type emperor is no prospect. 16. Song Taizong Zhao Guanji. Zhao Guanji, 939 to 997, the second emperor of the Song Dynasty, reigned for 21 years, and was the younger brother of Taizong Zhao Guangayan. Taizong was promising in politics, loved reading, poetry, and prose, and valued cultural undertakings, which changed the bad habit of emphasizing martial arts and despising literature since the end of Tang Dynasty. However, he has repeatedly failed in the military and is not good at martial arts. Mao Zedong's comments. 1. This person does not know soldiers, and is not of kittens. After repeated defeats, the kitten always used the method of luring the enemy to go deep, gathering and annihilating them, and the Song people finally lost consciousness. 2. Unscrupulous, eager to take the stage. 3. Zhao Guangai's words of a villain. 17. Genghis Khan. Temujin, 1162 to 1227, Khan of the Mongol Empire, nicknamed Genghis Khan. Mongols, the founder, statesman, military commander, and emperor of the Great Mongol Kingdom, the Great Khan of the Mongol Empire. After the establishment of the Yuan dynasty, Kublai Khan, the ancestor of the Yuan dynasty, respected Genghis Khan as Emperor Taizong Huo. Mao Zedong's comments. Some old men can do great things. Genghis Khan is an illiterate old man. Mao Zedong just wanted to emphasize that some old men can do great things. Genghis Khan was not illiterate. Yellow Chukai, a famous official in the early Yuan dynasty, wrote in Xianfeng Qinghuilu. It is mentioned in the book that Genghis Khan can read the documents in person. 18. Ming Taizong Zhu Yuanzhang. Zhu Yuanzhang, 1328 to 1398, Emperor Gao of the Ming dynasty, was the founding emperor of the Ming dynasty. Reigned for 31 years. He was the second emperor who was born in a commoner among the emperors of several major dynasties in Chinese history. He was poor when he was young. During his reign, he attached great importance to farming, built water conservancy projects, reduced and exempted taxes, and gradually recovered and developed social production, which was known as the rule of Hung Guiyu in history. At the same time, the law of the Ming dynasty was established to manage the people and bureaucrats with severe punishments and laws, severely crack down on corruption by officials, set up special agencies such as Jinyue, and strengthen the central imperial power. Zhu Yuanzhang has always been a very controversial figure. Those who hold positive comments think that he has vigorously cracked down on corruption and achieved remarkable results in economic development. Moreover, Taizong is a rare diligent emperor. Those who hold negative comments focus more on its high-handed rule, such as massacres of heroic officials, use of special agents to control politics, literary prisons, and court staff, etc. Mao Zedong's comments. 1. Evaluation of the ability to govern the country. Don't look down on the old man. Some old men can do great things. Genghis Khan is an illiterate old man. Liu Bang is an old man who doesn't know a few words. Zhu Yuanzhang is also illiterate and is a cattle herder. Note, when Genghis Khan, Liu Bang, and Zhu Yuanzhang were emperors, their cultural level had reached the level of being able to review memorials and sign orders. 2. Evaluation of military capabilities. Since ancient times, Li Shimin has never been better than Li Shimin, followed by Zhu Yuanzhang. 19. Xuan Yi, the fourth emperor of the Qing dynasty, Kanzi. During the second session of the Second National People's Congress in April 1960, Chairman Mao met Laoshi and talked about Kanzi's 3 great contributions. Mao Zedong said that the first great contribution of Emperor Kanzi was to conquer the territory our country owns today. The large territory we inherit today was basically firmly determined by Emperor Kanzi. He conquered Galdan 3 times, united all the Mongolian tribes, and firmly guarded Xinjiang. He marched into Tibet, revitalized the Yellow Sea, respected the Dalai Lama, escorted the 6th Dalai Lama into Tibet, defeated the Yungars, and took a crucial step in maintaining the unity of the southwestern frontier. He invaded and suppressed Taiwan, fought fiercely in Penghu, and completed the great cause of unifying Taiwan. He recovered Yaksa in the northeast, organized the people of all ethnic groups in the northeast to fight against Russia, signed the Nurchinsk Treaty with Tsarist Russia, guaranteed that I would garrison Heilongjiang forever, won the victory of independent diplomacy, and made great contributions to the consolidation of the northeast frontier. Mao Zedong said that Emperor Kanzi's second great contribution was his united front policy. When the Manchus entered the customs, their military strength was only over 50,000, and their family members were only 200,000. With such a small population to rule such a big country, occupy such a large territory, and manage such a large population, the contradictions were very prominent. Emperor Kanzi invented a unified on the front line. He first united the Mongolians and other ethnic minorities, and later united the upper class of the Han nationality. He also comprehensively studied and inherited the Han culture that was much more advanced than the Manchu culture at that time. He respected Confucius and Confucianism. In terms of high-up officials, all high-ranking officials are full and Han, such as bachelors, ministers, and ministers of military affairs. In this way, Kanzi successfully overcame the difficulty of the lack of Manchu officials, and truly achieved the miraculous effect of defeating 100 with 1. Mao Zedong said that the third great thing about Emperor Kanzi was his employment system with clear rewards and punishments. Mao Zedong gave some practical examples to show that even if the prince made a mistake, he would still be severely punished. The prince lost the battle and dared not enter Dashen Gate when he came back, so he still had to squat outside the city, waiting for punishment. His set of methods can not only mobilize the enthusiasm of his subordinates, go forward bravely, without hesitation, but also organize a team with strict discipline, invincible. Mao Zedong particularly praised Emperor Kanzi's learning spirit, saying that he was not only talented, but also diligent and studious. He knew several foreign languages, including Greek, in addition to several national languages. He is not only a military strategist, a politician, but also a great literati. He is proficient in poetry, calligraphy, and painting. Mao Zedong also said that Emperor Kanzi was the first enlightened monarch who knew how to learn from the advanced knowledge of Western capitalism. Kanzi liked to study natural science. He has strong interests in mathematics, astronomy, geography, medicine, biology, anatomy, agronomy, and engineering technology, and personally presides over the editing of scientific and technological books. Mao Zedong's remarks, as well as the intervention of Zhou Enlai, Liu Shaokai, and others, surprised Laoshi. Mao's evaluation of the Manchus and Emperor Kanzi was always in Laoshi's mind, and it became the main topic of Laoshi's thinking in his later years.